The Oklahoma Business Show is proudly sponsored by Your IT. Visit yourit.com to learn more about our services and schedule a chat to find out how we can help you. That's yourit.com. You deserve better IT.
I'm Chris Mraz, and welcome to the Oklahoma Business Show, where we speak with business owners and leaders about their struggles, successes, and things they've learned along the way. Happy day, everybody. Chris Mraz here. Welcome to the Oklahoma Business Show. Excited to have you with us. And today, I'm joined by Gunnar Hood, who is the owner of WSI Summit in Oklahoma City. Marketer, speaker, master of all things LinkedIn, just all around great guy. But Gunnar, why don't you kick us off with maybe a little better bio than what I'm able to give?
All right, I'll start with the short version, and then if you've got questions, we can certainly drill back into that.
We'll definitely have questions.
So the marketing part of it is really just about 11 years of my career, the most recent part. Before that, I spent 25 years in financial services in a couple of different areas of the country, mostly here in the Southwest. And then when one of those jobs got or became redundant, I guess is the best way to say it, it created an opportunity for me to make a career transition. And that led me to discovering the opportunity to launch a digital marketing firm attached to a global network that allows us to serve the needs of B2B clients, both here and we've got clients now in 10 different states.
Oh, wow. So only B2B.
We do have a little bit of B2C. It comes from really through referral process, but our target market is B2B.
Okay. So I'm always curious when I hear someone who's made that transition from corporate to starting a business. What was that journey like? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was interesting because I was very happy in the corporate world for a number of years, running large call center operations for big financial services companies. And so, but what I realized is, after doing it for 25 years, the higher you moved up in the organization, the less you talk to customers. And, the more HR issues showed up because I think my last gig, I had about 700 employees.
Oh, wow.
And so there was always something calling your attention. And when that wasn't happening, you were pretty much sequestered to a conference call with, the headquarters on the East Coast for most of your day. And so it became a little less fulfilling. In the last year I was with the last company, I was actually traveling up to Minneapolis, St. Paul 4 days a week and working remotely 1 day a week from here, running a couple of operations. What happened next is about a year into it, a hedge fund put pressure on the company to say, hey, you're not performing the way that you should. And one of their choices was, well, let's sell off our highest cost of capital assets, which happened to be the division I was in. So I got outplaced, if you will. And it was the right time of my life because I had one kid in college, two in high school or high schoolish. And most jobs that I would want to take at a comparable level would require relocation. Yeah. And I said, I just don't think that's the option. So the first conversation I had with the outplacement consultant was, I don't want to waste your time or mine writing a resume or going on interviews for jobs I really have no interest in. But if you can help me figure out going into business for myself, let's do it. So we had that conversation and it started out with, let's narrow down what interests you and what doesn't interest you. That led him to introducing me to a franchise consultant who also went through a similar process because it's like, well, do you want McDonald's? Absolutely not. And so it really focused in on, I enjoyed B2B. I enjoyed working with people who, have businesses that, have long sales cycles and they need help moving those along. And I also came to appreciate through the call center environment and the financial services processes and systems, things that I think you're getting familiar with as well through EOS and other things. And, if I were to stand up my own marketing agency, and it wasn't an immediate decision that it was going to be marketing, but if I was going to do something, it would either be start from scratch and do all this, or how can I plug into somebody's systems? And that led us down the path of looking at really 3 different types of franchise opportunities, 2 of which I discarded and landed on WSI. WSI is headquartered in Toronto. They've been around since 1995. And what I liked about the situation was that they had offices, and still do, in about 80 countries worldwide, 450 different offices. So they developed up this network of support, both in terms of consulting nature, that we could tap into people who have expertise that we don't. If somebody from the pharmaceutical industry said, hey, can you help us? I don't have that expertise, but we have people with that expertise in our network that we can tap into to help them. The other thing was, you can build a large organization if you want to, but they also have production systems built in that you can tap into so that you don't need a large, degree of overhead in your own operation. You can tap into theirs to get things done. And because there's systems and processes in place, there's standardization that applies that gives you that level of consistency for delivery to the client. So that became very attractive to us, because it's like, I've had a lot of employees in the past. I'm not sure that's what I really want going forward. And, to this day, it's just really been 2 of us running this, leveraging all of the resources that are available to us through the network to get things done for our clients.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic business model if you can get into it and make that work. So many people do think they have to hire 10, 15 people, and now they're managing instead of doing what they're passionate about. Franchise model is not something that I ever personally looked into, but having made so many connections over the years, I understand it a lot more than I used to, and have a much better appreciation for it. So being able to do that is just fantastic. I'm curious though, going from an organization that size to self-employed to start, and now do you ever miss that large camaraderie? I know it's been quite a few years, but that first maybe 6 months or year, was it strange not constantly being around other people?
It was a little bit different, but I think one of the things that helped me transition was recognizing, we went through a whole SWOT analysis before making the final decision. And one of the things that I recognized was, even though I had been responsible for a sales organization, that was part of my responsibility, my skills in sales were horrible. I had not done direct selling to anybody since the first 3 years of my career when I was at Merrill Lynch. Okay. And I was horrible. I mean, it really was bad. And so that was my biggest concern, is what do I do around that? But it turned out that WSI had brought in some consultants from Sandler Training as part of our initial training phase. Okay. And so they were up in Canada, who I met, and they introduced me to Mike Crandall here locally in Oklahoma. And I've been working with Mike ever since. And that gave me, I think, the skills and tools that I needed to feel comfortable, not selling, but really being a partner and a consultant to people throughout the process. And so in that process, too, it developed new relationships for me that, took over for the ones that maybe I was leaving behind.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The reason I asked that question is, one of the things that I frequently find myself missing, even though I am a bit of an introvert, is just being around other people. So I'm always curious how others have kind of managed that. And I love that. That's one of the reasons that I've gotten involved in other organizations as well, is to build those relationships. So if anyone here has started a business, maybe you're thinking of it, and that's an issue for you, find, whether it's a sales organization or a chamber of commerce, find a networking group and some other places that you can kind of find that those relationships that maybe you're leaving.
And, I'll add something to that too. When I was in the corporate world, it was very insular in the sense that, my day was very occupied. There was little opportunity to get into the local community. I had been a member of the Oklahoma City Chamber's Board of Advisors since the first day I got here. And that was one outlet for me to, connect with other business leaders. And it was actually years of that helped me discover what I wanted to do next on the personal side. But then there were also opportunities when I had more time than revenue, is to get out there and volunteer in ways that I couldn't have done before. So I worked with the Oklahoma City Public Schools for several years on their career academy system, and we helped stand up an organization in Oklahoma City called 1 Million Cups, which was geared towards entrepreneurs. And so that has continued on. I think I was there for the first 3 years, and then we handed the baton off to others. And so it gave me, a lot of opportunities to engage in the community in ways that I couldn't before, or that the company didn't necessarily condone, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. It's probably an area I've neglected a bit, is looking for some of those opportunities that I need to. As you started, has there been any major turning points, a time where you maybe had to pivot or change directions, or maybe just really ramped up? Any major turning points or times you can think about as you were getting things going?
Yeah, I think that every business probably goes through this, that, you start out with one idea and you evolve over time. And sometimes it is a major pivot. In other cases, it's more of a gradual evolution. When we first started, this was 2012, mobile was not as prevalent as a tool as it is today. And now it is the dominant tool when it comes to search indexes and things like that. And so, that has caused some shift in terms of how we approach situations, or how we did then. We also found that, the mentality of companies, the whole subscription model has really evolved strongly over the last, several years. And when we first got into it, the traditional pattern was, you need a website. Well, here's a big fee up front for that and things like that. And we realized that wasn't a successful approach. It was a process for a lot of people. And we ended up pivoting at that point to say, let's go towards more of a recurring revenue model that smooths this out for them, gives them longer term commitments in terms of services without contractual obligations, and, makes it an easier decision for them. And then for us at the same time, what we found is this process meant that, there was never a defined endpoint to a relationship like there is with, you build a website, well, we're done. Now what? And you have to resell the relationship. Here, it just continued on. And so we have customers that we've been working with for 9 years, as a result of this. And it's just ongoing. And as long as we deliver results on a month-to-month basis, they continue to work with us.
Yeah. So you started off on maybe the traditional, again, going back to 2012, building static websites. Did you do any, what would be called digital marketing then, of, whether it's newsletters or social media, whatever services maybe you've added? Did you start off doing some of those ongoing marketing efforts, or was it mostly, here's your website and you're done?
So those were all things that we could bring to the table.
Okay.
And I think what we found was a big differentiator for us too, was not walking in the door saying, hey, you need a new website. Because maybe their website's good enough. Sometimes they would come to us saying, we think we need a new website. And we'll go, well, why don't we try and figure that out? Because you may not. And so what we found is that 98% of the people that we start working with have never really seen analytics or had the advantage of that. And one of the strengths that I built up in the corporate world was really data-driven analysis. Okay. We launched programs called data-driven high-performance coaching for our employees. We were a call center, so we were very data-driven around things, and it helped guide informed decision-making. And that's one of the things I looked at as saying, that's a differentiator for us coming into this market, is if people have websites and other things, but they don't have any analytics or knowledge of the performance of that, that's a gap. So how do we help take more of a strategic approach with our clients and do an assessment that says, let's look at all the analytics, not just, what your website is doing, but let's look at the competition who shows up, because 95 to 98% of people that have a problem that they want solved start with a search on Google. So who shows up when they search for the problems that you solve? Is it you, or is it your competition? If it's your competition, then why? Yeah. And why aren't you showing up for that? And then how does that layer into, is it a problem with the website, that the website's not built right to support that? Is it that you just haven't been intentional from a search optimization perspective? Or are there other factors that come into play? And then besides all of those, what are the other things that may factor in? You mentioned email marketing and newsletters and things like that. What are you doing in terms of that to nurture those sales opportunities, especially in the B2B world where it's a longer sales cycle? How are you nurturing those things? And, how are you automating some of that process? And so that really has allowed us to develop very strong relationships with customers from the get-go, because we build a strategy and a roadmap to say, here's how we prioritize it. Chances are you've never had this happen, and I know I haven't. Nobody's ever said, I've got an unlimited budget, let's do it all. So the roadmap helps us prioritize what we think is going to have the greatest probability of success to start with, and then we can add on other things as that takes root, and they see the results from that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. If there are people who are listening who maybe find that they're not getting those inbound leads like they want, are there maybe a top one or two things that you regularly see as common problems that they might consider to look at initially?
Yeah. So typically it's one, people don't know that they exist because they can't find them for the problems that they're trying to solve. So oftentimes we find that their website has not been optimized for search. And there's little things that you can do, instruction sets that tell Google who you are, what you do, and how you help people. And those are pretty simplistic to do. And now even AI can help people solve for those things. But it's good to have a strategy around, well, what do we want people to find us for? And what do we not want them to find us for? Because sometimes, you may get calls for all these things that you can do, but people expect you to do it for free. And it's like, that's not the call that I want. So how do we, shift that away using negative SEO strategy to get rid of those and focusing on the things that you do? The second thing is really, understanding where your audience is looking for you. And that's where analytics can help. That'll give you at least a view of where your traffic is coming from, because sometimes people say, oh, we tried that Facebook thing, it didn't work out. Okay, you're a B2B company. Help me understand why you thought Facebook would be a good place for you. Well, this guy called us. And or you get the call, hey, your Google business profile, how many of those calls do you get a day? And so people have, become accustomed to being kind of transactional or kind of task focused and not relating it back to a larger strategy. So part of what we do is, okay, let's understand where your audience really is looking, what types of things that they're looking for, so that you can show up in the places most likely to find them. That's going to change the quality and the quantity of the leads that they generate.
Yeah, that's my next question was going to be, what do you feel you do differently than other people in the industry? But I think you just nailed it. There are so many companies who they sell what they sell and they have what they have, and that's what you get. You're going to get a website. You're going to get X, Y, and Z. The fact that you take that time to be consultative and find out what they're trying to accomplish and put together a specific roadmap and plan, I think that's brilliant. Is that, over time, is that something you've just tweaked and put together, based on your conversations with clients? How did you kind of develop that strategy?
So some of this I have to give credit to WSI for, because they recognize this as opportunities. We had consultants in other markets that were, they all came from maybe like KPMG consulting side of things. And, so they kind of had that ingrained in them. And they said, this seems to be something that we're missing. How can we introduce this and really structure it in a way that's meaningful? And so we developed this process. And when I look back at all of the clients that I've worked with, the ones that I'm still working with today all started with strategy. The ones I'm no longer working with started with transactional services. Oh, I need pay-per-click, or I need this and that, because it was what they thought they needed, but they weren't open to hearing the larger strategy. And, it became temporary for them and temporary for us as a result. So today, 95% of the people, unless it's a referral that come to us, we say, this is how we have to start. We can't do a great job for you if we don't start this way. And, some of them say no, and that's perfectly okay, because that saves us the frustration of working with the wrong client and allows us to spend the time with the right client.
Yeah, I think that's a massive lesson that a lot of business owners take too long to understand, is making sure that client's a right fit for your business. I definitely starting out, a lot of times is take whatever you can. But the fact that you're able to identify, no, it's our process and we have to make sure it's the right fit. I know that's probably saved you an immense amount of headaches over the years.
Well, I'll admit it wasn't that way at first. So you asked what was a pivot point. I would say one of those pivot points, probably a couple years in, was disqualifying prospects. Something I learned from Sandler. And, it's one of those gut check moments when you do it the first time going, oh my God, I'm going to say no to somebody. But it really is, as I said a minute ago, every no that you give somebody allows you to spend time with the right somebody instead, the one that's going to appreciate what you do, how you can help them, and you feel better about those results. Yeah. If it's not a right fit, you both end up struggling with it, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah. And, someone who is not a right fit for you will be a right fit for someone else. That's one thing about pretty much any industry is there's plenty of business to go around, and you don't have to, assume that you have to take someone on. They'll find the perfect fit, and they'll, like you said, make room for someone else for you. I love
and
that.
Sometimes we can refer them to somebody that might be a better fit for what they need. They could be one of those specialists. I've gotten to know many people in this industry, in the local area, and I never felt like I compete with them.
Right.
That they do things uniquely or differently. Somebody might work with, let's say, a med spa from a social media perspective. That's not a fit for me. I don't understand it. I don't do it, but I know somebody who does. So I can say, here's a great person for you.
Yeah, that's perfect. Frequently, there's a point in a new business's journey where they question their decision, or maybe they don't feel quite so confident about their decision to start. Did you ever have a time that you didn't feel super confident about what you were doing?
Some call it the imposter syndrome and stuff. And, my personality type is I like to feel confident that I know what I talk about. Mm-hmm. And I would have to say in those first 2 years, I probably spent more time trying to educate myself than selling. And that's probably the wrong mix, because what I started to realize over time is I did know more than most people that I would get in front of. And I found that from a prospecting standpoint, my best tools were education. Part of my career growing up was training and coaching others in organizations. And so that led to kind of a natural way of me getting in front of people and, doing webinars or in front of a room talking about, here's some things you should know as a business owner about marketing and digital marketing and things like that. A couple of them would raise their hand. I would go into these sometimes thinking, I don't know if I know enough. And then the questions I get would go, okay, I know enough. and so it has really given me a lot more confidence over the years to go, okay, the average person, today it's AI, am I an expert in AI? Not yet, but I do know a lot more than a lot of other people. So it's easy for me to help educate them, bring them along with me as part of the process. And we both learn more together.
Yeah. So staying on that specific topic of AI, how are you seeing that being used in your business, or how do you see it changing that at this stage, and then maybe even just 1 year down the road?
It's funny because a little over a year ago, WSI went through a whole brand revitalization process. Who are we? What are our core values? What are we trying to do? And this was before AI was released last November. So I think this came out 6 months before then. And our slogan turned out to be embrace digital, stay human.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes you get lucky with this stuff, but it really has been a guiding principle for us going forward, because it is about how do you embrace digital, but still maintain that human element. And that's our perspective when it comes to AI. It's great for doing tasks. It's great for brainstorming. But if you take it and use it blindly, you're going to get bit, because it's going to do things that, if you don't have an expertise in what it's talking about. And I give you a couple examples I've heard about is, some lawyer in New York went to court with his entire case built up on case examples from AI that he thought were real, that none of them were real. He got kicked out of court. A huge embarrassment and, time waste. And I think the judge was extremely upset about it because he didn't look. We even see, you mentioned LinkedIn earlier, and this is an area where we're starting to see more and more of these tools come out where people are trying to automate the process of relationship building. It's a human element. You can't just let a robot do it or a synthetic being do it for you. There's tasks that you can let it do, like going, hey, I'm not sure what I should say in this connection request or in this post. So you ask AI for some help to get the thought process started, and then you edit it and make it your voice. Yeah. And that's fine. So the time savings there is, you may not have posted something because you were like, I can't think of anything to say, but AI helped you come up with the idea, give you the framework, and you fine-tuned it and you got it out there. So it helped you get something done that you wouldn't have done otherwise. And that gives you that visibility, or that makes that additional connection for you.
Yeah, I like that. We've been using it a little bit to flesh out some copy into, I think it's great for crunching data, finding.
It's getting better.
Yeah, finding patterns and whatnot. But you can tell if you open up an email, you see someone's post, and you're like, that is just, that's almost normal, but it's not quite right. It'll be interesting to see how people begin to if they begin to identify that. You mentioned that lawyer, and if that lawyer had sent that case to 1,000 people who didn't know anything about law, they would have never known that it wasn't real. So I think it'll be interesting to see how we can make sure we're not being fooled by it as we go down the road. As you're using it, as you're encouraging others to use it, you're seeing it mainly as a good tool for starting the process or fleshing things out? Are you seeing any situations where maybe you're discouraging people to use it or to be wary of trying to use it at all?
Yeah, it's funny. One of our clients sent us a blog post that they had created. And as we looked at it, one of the telltale signs of AI was really clear in there. It sometimes writes like a high schooler, the whole paragraph structure and everything. And by the end, it starts saying things like, in conclusion. And that phrase was in this, and we're like, this came from AI. Let's make sure we kick it back and get your own voice in here. And so I think it's going to continue to get better and better, as people train it. And, one of the things that it's funny is people say, well, when I interact with it, I find myself saying like, please and thank you. Yeah. And it's like, well, if you consider the fact that we're training this sentient thing, why not train it to be polite? There's enough non-polite stuff going on out there, let it do that. And so, if it makes a mistake and you catch it, it's funny to see it say, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me go back and fix that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if how far down this hole you want to go, but you mentioned, training this sentient thing. Do you think that AI can or will or is going to be sentient? I know we're getting way off topic, but I think it's a fantastic conversation.
I've had some conversations with people much, much more intellectual about this whole thing. And they're even predicting that it will become autonomous next year.
Oh, wow.
That doesn't mean it's fully sentient at that point, but it has the potential to continue operating almost independently. And so what does the future hold for us? It really is more about us being supervisors of what happens with it. From a workforce perspective, there's a lot of concern about, what's the impact to the knowledge workers. You're not going to necessarily replace the waiters and waitresses and establishments or flight attendants on airlines. There's still certain human elements that it's not ready to do. But when you look at knowledge work, it's not about replacing the individual. It's around tasks. And, here's an example of something. A bank looked at their customer service times and said, on average, it takes our reps about 2.5 minutes to get an answer for a particular question for a customer. So they insourced a ChatGPT solution, trained it with the right information. And what they found was a $14,000 investment in doing that resulted in over $400,000 in time savings for them by reducing the lookup time to less than 30 seconds.
That's pretty incredible.
So they got a huge ROI on that. And, nobody lost their job. They just became more efficient in that. But as we look forward, the thing is, what tasks are ripe for automation or something like AI to process versus a human, whereas what tasks are humans better at? And that's, perhaps for now, still strategy, creativity, things like that. Sure, that's going to change because if you use it to brainstorm, that's going to help with creative ideas, because your knowledge base is only so much. Yeah. Its knowledge base is a lot bigger. It's just a matter of how do you prompt it to get the information you want to do those things. And so they say that the greatest programming language for the next 10 years is English. It's about writing the right prompts for AI.
That's fascinating. That'll be interesting. And I think that's the whole portion of, or the learning the correct prompts and the information to get back what you need is kind of fascinating as well. You can ask the same thing half a dozen different ways, and you can see it change the information that it provides and improve. So I think that'll be curious to see if it learns those to make suggestions itself or whatnot. But
yeah, I mean, it truly is conversational, and some more than others. There's lots of language learning models out there. In fact, I was coming back from Las Vegas a few weeks ago, and our flight was delayed. So it's like, okay, I need to write up this presentation. Let me see if this new tool called Pi, which was developed by Reid Hoffman, the former founder of LinkedIn, see if it can help me. It's meant to have more of an emotional aspect to it than ChatGPT or Bard or other things. And so I probably spent 90 minutes actually having a conversation with this thing, not in spoken word, but text back and forth. And it was going really well. And then it would derail like a normal conversation going, so tell me about your background. I'm like, how is that relevant to what we're talking about here? And, I'm just trying to make conversation. No, get back on task, So I had to find myself doing that. And ultimately, it couldn't deliver what I wanted, even though it said it might. And what I found out later is that it has like a 300 character limit in its responses. So it's got structural limits to it right now that may not be there a year from now as it's learning this. But as I said, well, tell me why I should use you over ChatGPT. And it said, well, this is what I do really well. I said, oh, that's kind of like in the movie Her. And it goes, well, yeah, kind of like that. I'm here to be conversational in nature. And it's like, this is getting kind of interesting.
I have yet, mainly out of fear, I've yet to go and try to have just a lengthy conversation. I've read all the crazy stories and some of those that happen. And I'm like, I don't want to get sucked in. I
had nothing to do.
Like I'll spend 2 hours here and then I'll just be confused and not understand what just happened.
Yeah.
We just need to go sometime and just talk about AI because I would love to pick your brain and learn more about that. That's an area that I have not spent enough time investigating that next year I plan to.
Well, we're certainly, WSI is certainly putting a lot of time and effort into it because there's so many other business owners like you in that sense. It's like, I know I need to, but I haven't, and I'm not sure where to start. And so, I mean, we just launched a new workshop series early in October for business owners. It's a 3-part series to say, okay, these are the things you need to know as a business owner about AI, how it affects your business, how you can assess your business's AI readiness. Because many companies have been using AI for years without knowing it. So many tools that you acquire out there had AI in the background. Heck, pull out your iPhone, Siri, that's AI driven. Alexa, hope that didn't trigger anything. That's AI driven. And so, we just take it for granted that, this is this real new fabulous thing. But what's now available is the tools. And as we start to integrate and learn this model more ourselves, the shift that's going to happen is we need less and less of these built tools, because unless they're built on a model that says we can adapt as the underlying language learning models evolve, if they're stuck to a particular learning model, that has a shelf life.
Yeah.
But if they can adapt, that has value going forward. And we're going to replace the ones that can't adapt with things that we start doing ourselves.
Yeah. And I think we've definitely seen that. The speed at which these new versions and upgrades are coming out is wild. How quickly we're already on, ChatGPT 4, and those are
for vision. And now, you can do PDFs in it. And I mean, it is, It is happening very, very rapidly.
Yeah. You and I will come back to that later at a different time because I'd love to keep going on that. One thing I'd really be curious about is, when I have these conversations, I always leave just encouraged. What would you say is maybe one of your biggest wins that, whether it was a sale or a feedback, but maybe a big win that you think about that really kind of encouraged you and drove you on and gave you that high for a bit? Anything come to mind?
It's funny because I talk about data, and then sometimes, you're like the cobbler's, children with no shoes. Is we showed up to one of our annual conventions, and one of our colleagues says, "Hey, congratulations." I'm like, "For what?" He goes, "You're in the top 25. I was like, "Of what?" And it was, of all the offices in the country, we had made it into the top 25 for revenue production. Oh, wow. And I was oblivious. We were just doing what we were doing and not paying attention to it. Well, that started us getting, paying more attention to it. And since that time, we have consistently, well, not consistently, but very frequently ended up monthly in the top 25 of revenue production. And when we look back as, what caused that, it's really something that we value in delivering to our customers, and we call that a luxury experience in the sense. You may have heard me talk about this before, but what I've discovered over the years, and I think I first kind of read it, and I'm paraphrasing it from an economist, is that luxury once sampled becomes necessity. Think about it. Would you go back to dial-up modems right now for internet speed? No. Would you go back to standard television versus HD television? No, because once you've had that, you don't want to go back. So when you think about service delivery for clients, if you can deliver a service experience that feels luxury to them, you never have to be that concerned about losing your clients. Because for me, one of my best clients is somebody who has worked with other companies and not had a great experience, because then they can appreciate the difference and they're stickier with me than somebody else. And so that's something that, we really try and reinforce as we work with clients. Some have even made comments, and maybe this is not a great thing, but say, you make me feel like you're your only client. And it's like, well, that kind of reinforces the luxury theme. But, that doesn't make me scalable. So I have to balance that.
I love that. I wrote that down because I think that's a magnificent quote. Because anyone in the service industry wants to think they're delivering the best service. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're close to it. But that mind shift of luxury, I think that resonates differently with me than just delivering the best possible service. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because I think that's huge. Is that something that you are intentional on, or is it something you just, hey, we want to be the best, and you kind of found yourself referencing that way? I know there was a quote that you said, but
yeah. So there's roots to that. When I was in the call center industry, many people are familiar with the name J.D. Power. J.D. Power had a certification process for call centers. And we wanted to hold ourselves to that standard because it really puts you like in the top 5% of call centers in your industry. And call center is probably too narrow. I should say contact centers, because it evolved to more than just phone calls. And so when I was in that last company, we earned that 6 or 7 years in a row. And we were named Global Call Center of the Year by a global organization a couple of times. And there were a couple other things like best places to work and stuff that we brought on board too. And so those were all things that we said are going to distinguish us from somebody else. If somebody's looking for an insurance company, maybe the fact that their service team is J.D. Power certified will be one more reason to give them to work with us. And so some of those tenets really carried over as we started building our business, saying, what reasons can we give people to want to stay with us or work with us in the first place? And, there's no J.D. Power certification for what I do, but if they can feel it, the payback for us is referrals. Yeah. And in the last year, 95% of our new business all came from referrals.
Oh, wow.
And so to us, that was one of those reflection points that says, that's awesome. I mean, we're making a difference.
Yeah, that's huge. We're coming close to our end here. Business owners who have been in business a while know that there's no secret to success. That's, always talked about. What's the secret to success? I don't think there is. But there's always those one or two things that a lot of businesses can point to as contributing to their success. Do you have maybe one or two things that you think have really contributed to your success and WSI Summit's success?
So one of those I would say is always be curious.
Okay.
And this ties into a great Ted Lasso episode too, where, it's be curious, not judgmental. And that just kind of expanded it. But I've always had a level of curiosity and this really helped me connect with my customers because I go in asking a lot of questions, not necessarily understanding their business, but by over time working with them, asking more of these right questions, they feel like I truly did understand their business and they didn't have to constantly explain it to me. But, I've got clients up in Ohio that say, we love what you write for us because it's like we wrote it ourselves, things like that. And so if you're curious and you stay that way and not just go, oh, I know this, but you can always ask another question, it's going to help you kind of develop that relationship even stronger with people. So that was one. And then, systems and processes, I think, are really important to, back yourself up with, as opposed to just constantly winging it, going, well, we'll just do it this way. No, we do it this way because we know this way works, and we've got the data to prove it.
Yeah. You can maybe not always, but almost always tell when you go into a business and they don't have system and processes and they're winging it. So I'm glad you mentioned that because that is important. What is this? We always ask this question. It's a critical, important question. What's one piece of technology you can't live without?
Well, if you haven't figured it out through the course of this conversation, is my business wouldn't exist if there weren't an internet, and the internet depends on computers. And so for me, it really is, a computer allows me to work from anywhere. And, we've been fortunate that, we've worked remotely before that the pandemic required it. And we continue to be able to work remotely and travel and work at the same time. So the computer is the answer for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. If somebody would like to reach out to you, maybe get more information about you and what WSI can do for them, how can they connect with you?
I'd say two ways. One is our website, WSI-summit.com, or look me up on LinkedIn. I'm the only Gunnar Hood, spelled with an A, that exists on LinkedIn. It's real easy to find me. And if that doesn't work, you can just go linkedgunnar.com. It'll take you to my LinkedIn page.
Awesome. Perfect. I'm going to have to learn that trick. I don't have a shortcut like that created. That's brilliant. Well, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you making time and
coming for having me,
hanging out with us for a little bit. And I will schedule time with you to go chat more about AI.
I look forward to it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you all for joining. Have a fantastic day.
The Oklahoma Business Show is proudly sponsored by Your IT, managed IT services and cybersecurity for Oklahoma businesses. Are you a business leader who's frustrated with your current technology, worried about cyber threats, and too damn busy to handle it yourself? Your IT makes IT easy, with clear and transparent pricing and the ability to customize services to fit your unique business needs. Visit yourit.com to learn more about our services and schedule a chat to find out how we can help you. That's yourit.com. You deserve better IT.